I'm so glad you made it to this page. My name is Agnesia Agrella. I'm a business analyst at marketspaceproductivity.com, and I'd like to talk to you today about the emotion of change. I introduced this topic to you last week, and today I actually want to expand on it, and I want to explain why is it different from change management or managing change. As business analysts, sorry, I just had to stop the recording. It seems to actually do stereo in my head, so I can actually hear myself. So I just had to stop the recording so that I can actually talk to you. So why is change management and managing change different from the emotion of change? We are all used to managing change as business analysts. We are all aware of how we actually have to do change requests. We have to document what is our scope in a project. And then when anything changes in that scope, we have to record what is the change that we want. Why do we want it? We have to do impact assessments. We have to cost it. And then we have to manage it and add it to our requirements. And that normally needs to be reduced to as much as possible, because we don't want to increase our scope, we don't want to increase our cost, and we don't want to increase the time it will take to deliver the project. And as a business analyst, we know how easy scope creep is. But that's not what I'm talking about today. Today I want to talk to you about the emotions of change. And that is the internal emotions that we have to go through when we introduce to change. And all our stakeholders will be introduced to change when we do a project for them. So whenever we actually introduce them to something that they perceive as a threat to their position, we will encounter resistance to change. And as I explained last week, there will be a couple of reactions that we can get. And my experience, especially in the last 2 years, has been that there's a lot more aggression in the corporate world. The way people talk to each other is really deteriorating. It seems like everybody has got this idea that they can talk to anybody the way they like because they have a certain position. And that is what's actually driven me to actually do this emotion of change, because it all starts with me. How, as a business analyst, are you trying to prove to yourself how good you are? Are you trying to prove to your stakeholders that you know more than them? And are you so scared that they're actually going to find out that you don't know about your topic, that you don't want to admit it? And that is where I believe the emotion of change come in, and how we as business analysts can build our own confidence and our own skills as business analysts is when we connect with our own fear of being found out that we don't know something. So we rather pretend that we know what we're talking about than to openly say we don't know. And that is what I also talked about, transparency and choice. It is my choice to do work in an environment where I am transparent. I have found that in the times when I've actually openly acknowledged that I don't know something, but I will go and find out, that is when I actually build the relationship with my stakeholder, that they trust me, that they will ask me, and that they will also consult with me when they're not sure. So if I am willing to admit that I can't do something, it makes it safe for them to say they can't do something. And if we're introducing especially technology, and if they're a bit of the older generation and they don't know what the technology will give them, they will be so scared of that technology and they will resist your ideas with everything they've got. They will block you. They will try and tell the management that they don't need this, that they know what they're doing, but they will do anything in their power to stay in that environment of where it's comfortable for them. So that is what I also mentioned, is that we actually have to know yourself. The first aspect of emotion of change is know yourself. Know your own process. Know what it feels like in your body when you get close to that time when you're unsure and you're coming to where you have to admit, or that embarrassing moment when you have to say, I don't know this, or I have made a mistake. In the corporate world today, it is common ground where people will rather blame the other person than to acknowledge that they have made a mistake. And once we've actually understand and that anxiety and emotion and sensation in our body will come up when we come close to that place where we have to admit it. So when we understand our own bodies, we can feel it come up. We can then make a choice. What am I going to do in this situation? Am I going to expose myself in this group, or am I going to do it on a one-on-one? There is always a different ways of doing it. I have learned that it's easy for me to do it in a big group. I don't mind saying it in a big group, but you as a business analyst who's not used to that environment, and especially if you've worked in an environment where there's a lot of animosity and a lot of finger pointing and also blaming going on, because there's always blaming between IT and business of who's responsible when the project is not going well. To avoid those circumstances, that is why people actually then blame each other. But I am quite happy to actually openly admit when I've made a mistake, and normally I can see the shock on people's faces when you are prepared to make those choices. And they always think that, and you're mad admitting it, but when they actually see the attitude from the stakeholder later and the repercussions from the project, when you actually gain more respect from everybody around you, that's when people start feeling safe with you and they start sharing more and more with you. So from that perspective, the second aspect that I want to then talk about is, and the second step in emotion of change is knowing your organization. It's very important to know your stakeholders. Which ones of them are comfortable in a group? Which ones of them do you actually have to go one-on-one with? So when you actually introduce a new idea, do you have to go to an individual who is a bit more cautious and a bit more conservative and talk to them first about your idea on a one-on-one? So that is what we call lobbying. Are you lobbying your ideas? Do you go to your individual stakeholders and talk to them about it? Or do you just set up a meeting and expect them to come to your review session and expose themselves for the first time about those ideas in that meeting? I have found that that does not work so well, especially when it's controversial and it's going to change the environment drastically. I prefer to do a lot of lobbying. I will go and sit with each one of my stakeholders, go through my requirements with them one-on-one so that they have the time to ask the questions that they're too embarrassed to ask in a group. That's where when I get to them in a group and I know they are actually going to be resistant, I will put that question on the table on their behalf. I will not let them expose themselves. I will expose the topics that they are too scared to deal with for them. And that way I also keep my trust with my stakeholders. So these are little tips that I've learned over the years, and I hope they're helpful to you. And I hope that you will see how it actually works for you and try some of them. So the third one that I want to then talk about is understanding your project. You have to know what is the impact going to be on the organization. If this is a project that is huge for the organization's bottom line, going to bring lots of bottom line into the organization, but is going to change the department or departments of where it's going to be implemented completely, then you have to actually decide how are you going to handle the emotions of change. You have to manage your change management then. So when there's scope creep and when things changes or you discover something during your business requirements findings, you have to be able to say, how is this going to impact on my stakeholders' emotion? Are they going to resist me? And how did they resist me? Try and understand the personality of each one of your stakeholders. Are they actually going to give you a cold shoulder, which is the withdrawal symptoms, and also giving you going into their own freeze mechanisms? Or are they going to become aggressive and tell you your project is not going to work, or give you all the reasons why it shouldn't be done? Or are you going to get the other ones who just ignore you, don't come to the meetings, or always have an excuse that they can't attend your meetings? These little actions and how the games they play is all the aspects that I put into the emotions of change. So from that perspective, you actually have to know your client. You have to know your stakeholder. So that is number 4. Know your customer, know how your customer will be affected by your project, by knowing your project, understanding the solutions that you're going to put on the table, telling your stakeholders about the solutions, and get to the benefits on what will be the benefits for that specific stakeholder. So there's a lot of research that you have to do before you actually go in and talk to all of these stakeholders. These emotions is almost like a psychology. And you have to go through the psychology of the project. You have to go through the psychology of your project. And you have to go through your own psychology. You have to understand what are you prepared to expose and how much are you prepared to expose about yourself to gain the confidence of your stakeholders. So from that perspective, emotion of change is 80% of what I do as a business analyst. 20% of the other work is doing all the other stuff about collecting the requirements, doing the facilitations, doing the planning, the writing up of the requirements. All of that I do in only the 20%. I spent 80% of my time on stakeholder analysis, meeting with them, understanding where they're coming from. If I have to, I will go and observe where they're coming from. For me, I work for my stakeholder. If it wasn't for my stakeholder, there won't be money on the table. So my first priority is to understand what makes my stakeholder work from a person, what is important to him, why is he in his position that he is, and I respect him for that. I am not a business analyst who wants to tell him how to run his business. I am there to do the research, to document it in a certain way, to give that to the technology department so that they can develop a software solution that will provide benefits to my stakeholder. I sell solutions. I do not sell more problems. And that is why I spend 80% of my time on understanding my stakeholder. I hope that if you want to learn how to use these techniques, that you will take the tour, click on the button below, and come and meet me at my mastermind in August 2014. My name is Agnesia Agrella, and I look forward to meeting you.